Coming up on today's episode of the Salesman Podcast.
When most people start an agency, they will go for the local businesses, basically whatever business they can think of, like restaurants, whatever's around their street. And what I found is local businesses have low budgets and they're hard to work with, but they are very easy to sell to. No, that's it. It's just budget and personnel. Because what I found, if you can find that overlap, like I'm not looking for dying industries. I'm looking for anything like that. Because I found if you can find that overlap, you're basically good to go. It's the easiest sale, and they make you the most money. Because what happens once you start pushing past 300 million in revenue is you start getting bureaucracy and you start losing a lot of that competence.
Hello, Sales Nation. My name is Will Barron and I'm the host of the Salesman Podcast, the world's most downloaded B2B sales show. On today's episode, we have Alex Berman. He is the founder over at Experiment 27. And on today's episode, we're getting into how you can find, contact, and close your golden geese buyers. Everything that we talk about is available in the show notes for this episode over at salesman.org. And with that said, let's jump right into it. Alex, welcome to the Salesman Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Will.
Right. Before we jump into this, I've got to explain, because you corrected me even before the podcast episode started. I wanted to talk about how we can find our golden goose buyers. And you corrected me saying that, well, there's not just one golden goose buyer, there's golden geese to go at. So with that, give us the audience here a bit of clarity, Alex. What does it mean to have a golden geese buyer, and what do they mean in the marketplace, and why do we want to go after them?
Sure. So a little about my background. I mainly specialize in growing services businesses, so B2B agencies. This is where I'm mainly coming from here. And what I found is when most people start an agency, they will go for the local businesses, basically whatever business they can think of, like restaurants, whatever's around their street. And what I found is local businesses have low budgets and they're hard to work with, but they are very easy to sell to. Okay. Now, a lot of other people, especially when I was at this Inc. 5000 fastest growing company, I was working at this agency as digital marketing, they had a digital marketing over there. We would target the enterprise, like big companies that you've heard of, Hearst, Tyson, those kind of companies. And what I found is those companies had massive budgets, but man, you ever try to sell to an enterprise company? It takes months and months and months to even get anything done. So what I've identified now, and what I teach everyone in Email 10K in our course, and really what we target at our lead gen agency X27, is we go after the golden geese, which is companies between $5 million and $150 million in revenue. So it's kind of like a hybrid between like small business, SMB, and enterprise. It's right there in the middle. And the reason why we go after the $5 million to $150 million in revenue is because they are the perfect hybrid. So they're just as easy to sell as a mom and pop, because you've got fewer decision makers controlling the budget, but they have the same level of budget as an enterprise level company. So now you've got these companies in the middle, I call them the golden geese, that are easy to sell to and have high budgets. And that's why we target all of those throughout our campaigns now. It's not even worth going to either of the other two.
Yeah, I know my experience both selling, not necessarily selling medical devices, because selling that to the government essentially here in the UK, but selling ad space on the podcast, selling our sales training, selling to a small business doing kind of under 10 million. I've not found any success whatsoever. So it's kind of going up the range that you give us there, Alex. But when I get to that 50, 100, brands that have done, even if the startups, they've done multiple rounds of funding, immediately it becomes, I guess there's multiple layers to this. One, they've got budget. Two, and I'm painting a broad brush here, you're dealing with people who are in a fast-growing company or large organization. Probably they know what they're doing. Again, painting a broad brush here. Often they know what they're doing more so than dealing with small to medium-sized organizations. They're small organizations because they're not either choosing to grow or they're not capable of growing. And so I find that even the individuals that I'm speaking to are more open to the marketing that we can offer them and the enterprise sales training that we can offer as well. So is this both budget and personnel, and is there any other criteria that make up these golden geese buyers?
No, that's it. It's just budget and personnel. Because what I found, if you can find that overlap, like I'm not looking for dying industries. I'm looking for anything like that. Because I found if you can find that overlap, you're basically good to go. It's the easiest sale, and they make you the most money. Because what happens once you start pushing past 300 million in revenue is you start getting bureaucracy, and you start losing a lot of that competence, right? At 150 million, you start getting people hidden in the organization, which a lot of enterprise buyers or a lot of enterprise Service business is actually like that because you can like hide out in a company for years
Yep.
and just not do anything. But from a growth point of view, if you're trying to get these companies in quick, that's the one to go with. This 5 to 150 million in revenue.
And another layer of this that I've never really pondered on, but I guess makes sense with your kind of a theory or analogy here, Alex, is that when I do deals with larger organizations, it's more complex because typically for them to work with us, they want to do a bigger deal, which is great on the surface, but doing 2 deals for 100 grand versus 1 deal for 150, sometimes the benefits and payoff of the revenue versus the amount of effort, the layers of bureaucracy that you're describing that you have to go through isn't always worth it. Is that been your experience as well?
Too. Like, yeah, we touch it too sometimes. Like, we had this very enterprise level sponsor for our YouTube channel come in, and they had like all of this. Like, most sponsors are like, yeah, they'll give you 5K for a video, give me 10K for a video. This sponsor was like, yeah, I mean, it was like going to be 100K, 150K deal, but they're like, do you have insurance? Like, do you have insurance for this stuff? Like, are your contractors in line? Like, they had this list of like, had to be 100 questions that they wanted us to go through to even consider it. And like, at that point, do we even want the 150K is what I'm thinking.
And how do you go about qualifying some of this in real time? Is there any questions that you ask? Perhaps you've got an inbound lead and you've not quite sussed out revenue or things like that. Is there any questions you ask to qualify that a buyer could be a golden goose or geese on a phone call?
So where we are right now, I think even like 3 years ago, I would have said, yeah, I run them through all these questions. Where we are right now, there's so many great lead databases. So we'll run them through either SalesNav or we'll run them through UpLead. And no, man, you can take a company, put any of them into these lead databases, and you'll get info on their revenue, you'll get info on their customers. And then, yeah, if you really want to work with them and you just want to gut check, we do also budget qualify before anyone jumps on a call with the inbound leads. We ask them what their marketing budget is for the next 6 months, and it's like, 5,000 a month, 10,000 a month, 15,000. Like, we have this criteria, and we won't hop on a call with anyone that doesn't answer that question up front. So when it's outbound, when you're running cold emails like we do, that's our bread and butter still. When you're running those cold emails, you can qualify in the lead databases. But otherwise, to find the golden geese, you can either verify on one of the navs, SalesNav, UpLead, or just ask them for their marketing budget and see if they can qualify that way.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people, or not a lot of people, some people will listen to this and will be going, well, is that a bit of a rude question to ask someone before you've even got on a call? We're trained that we're supposed to give value up front and all this other stuff as sales professionals. But no, your time is valuable as well, right? If you don't qualify the conversations that you're having from your perspective, buyers just run us around and mess us about as well, right?
If I wasn't a sales guy, I also would say, oh, it's crazy. Yeah, of course you ask for budget. But when I was a sales guy, I did the same thing. I would hop on meetings with everybody all the time. 15 minutes wasted here, 30 minutes wasted here. Like, my calendar was booked solid. And no, at a certain point, you realize I'm not even on the sales calls. Our sales team's on the calls, but their time is more valuable than talking to time wasters. What? Some people are very much of the mind that you should talk to everybody. But if somebody's not willing to tell you that their budget's $5,000 a month before you hop on a call with them, why would they ever buy from you? Especially an inbound lead when they see your website. Like, someone comes to salesman.org or someone comes to experiment27.com. They know what we do. They went through the about section, right? Like, they probably have some questions. They're ready to go. I know when I'm buying stuff, I'm ready to go. And the more roadblocks the sales guys put up, the less likely I am even to convert.
Sure.
So we want it to be as easy as possible. And I think if they're not ready to tell us the budget, they're not ready to even be on the sales call.
And just to just oppose this just slightly and play devil's advocate, I was on a call with Jared Glant of Grant Cardone Enterprises the other day, and they do something, I guess it's more of a sales following marketing there as opposed to a sales-led cold email approach and campaign. What they're doing is, obviously, Grant Cardone Enterprises has this incredibly large email database, and what they're doing is you go through the database, and the goal is every single person who they have an email address and a phone number for gets a call from a salesperson. Whether they've opted in, whether they've bought a book, whether they've bought a training product, they are absolutely, I was going to say the word hounding. They're hounding the list as opposed to hounding individuals, but they're going through absolutely everyone. So there's, what I'm going at here is, I feel like there's two extremes, and you should be playing in the extremes as opposed in the middle. You should be overly qualifying people, going after the people that you want to spend time with, or the alternative, what Grant Cardone and Jared Glanter's doing, they're going after absolutely everyone. But what most salespeople do is they play in the middle, they play it safe, they try and just tick boxes, and that's where you're going to fail, right?
Well, it comes down to thinking about who your customer is. So for Jared and for Grant, they are selling to the average American. They're selling high ticket coaching to the average person. So if you're going for everyone, you don't know. It's not like you can plug some random guy into LinkedIn and see if his family's worth $100 million. Like you got to talk to these guys and see if they qualify for a $60,000, $100,000 coaching package. I know because I'm in that business too with Email 10K, and we've kind of scaled that back a little bit because who knows what the ethics are of getting random people to give you 70K, for some random coaching program. But yeah, no, 100% depends on your target market. Some buyers, if the data is harder to find and you can't qualify them before you hop on the call, you're going to have to hound them. And yeah, I know that because I'm in Email 10K. The business we're in, if we went a little bit more internet marketing, a little bit more into that area, we could do the same thing, hound them down.
I know exactly what you're saying. So one of our selling points, this is a question that comes up regularly with our Sales Accelerator training program over at salesman.org. People ask us, what's the upsell? And my answer is there is no upsell because I don't have enough time to build any more products, and I'm not coaching anyone personally because I don't have time to do it. The product is the product. But it's a question that comes up, and it's an objection that comes up regularly with us because people are almost primed to it at this point of we're kind of digressing here and going down a different pathway of the conversation as well. I'll drag it back in a second. But that is a regular objection that comes up for us. I don't know if it's the same with you.
Well, so for us, we do have upsells. We've got the entire system built out. So you can join Email 10K. I don't need to even say the price in case we raise it, but it's like a 4-figure price. You join Email 10K, which is our course. And then our ideal is you go through the course and you're either successful on your own. You're in our private community. We're helping you there. Or you want somebody to do it for you. And then in that case, the upsell just comes naturally because we run a lead gen agency. We run a marketing agency. So you work with our agency done for you. Or if you want more coaching, we also have Institute of Sales. So we have the upsells in there. I just think it's a very different game. I could grab Grant Cardone's business model and lay it on Email 10K. I think it would work pretty well. I'm not against the business model at all.
Fair enough. Okay, well, let's go back to cold email for a second. Let's go back to B2B sales, right? How do you cadence? What do you do messaging wise? What do you do when you're reaching out to people that you know, because you've done your research ahead of time? That's what I'm taking away from this conversation. You've already done your research. When you're doing cold email, you're not just spamming the whole market. You're going after the golden geese, right? What's your messaging and cadence look like to get in front of those individuals?
Sure, and I think you made a very interesting point. And there are these groups in the cold email world now. The whole thing's been fractured. Who knows? Who knew how it would evolve? But no, there are these people that they're of the mindset where if your market is like 30,000 to 100,000 contacts, you should be basically spamming. Like write a good email and then blast it out to all these people. I specialize in the golden geese, which are like the high value people where there's fewer of them. Like when we were starting X27, there were 3,000 people in our 3,000 agencies that were qualified that we could work with. So if we spammed all 3,000 of them in 1 week, we would have blown it, And we did eventually end up talking to all 3,000 and had to pivot niches. So I learned this the hard way. But yeah, so what we're doing in our cold email is we are customizing every single email, at least the first sentence. And the structure that I like is first sentence is a compliment, butter them up. Second sentence is a case study. We've worked with somebody like you in the past, and we got this result. Third sentence is an ask. Like, hey, we'd love to do the same for you. We're around this week for a quick call. That's it. So, hey, Will, loved the interview you did with Jared Glant. Big fan of Grant Cardone and love your question style. Amazing work with the podcast. We help consulting-driven businesses generate more sponsorships, and we've done the same for the Alex Berman channel where we generate $10,000 a month for them. Would love to do the same for you. Are you around for a quick call this week? Let me know and I'll send over a few times.
And what kind of, don't share this if you feel it's confidential, but what kind of reply rates are you getting with these? Because that is pretty specific. That is going beyond what most people would send as a gold email.
And it sounds like it's tough, but when you break it down, it really is like customized compliment that takes 2 minutes to write. I could have written that compliment by looking at your YouTube channel, seeing Jared. I know Jared, like there, sentence done. The case study is going to be the same for everybody in the market. Like it's a specific market. This would be, we're just selling to personality-driven podcast companies or personality-driven B2B companies like that. And then the ask is stuck. So it seems like it takes a lot more work, but it really only takes about 2 to 3 minutes in email.
And from those emails, Alex, what kind of reply rate are you getting? Is this the industry standard might be 1%? Okay. What are you getting from your side?
Yeah. So we're typically looking for between a 3 to 6% meeting book rate. So we're not looking at reply rates. I mean, I will when I'm trying to optimize it.
Sure.
But we're looking at, you send 100 emails, you get 6 qualified meetings on the calendar.
Yeah, that would blow most email campaign rates out of the water. That'd be incredible for most organizations.
Yeah. And I think people look at the wrong thing. They're like, what's our reply rate? And it's like, I could send an email with, 100% reply rate. But it's what percentage of your customers are actually booking a meeting with you?
Yeah.
And it's like, if you take a couple of the right steps up front, exactly what we're talking about in Email 10K, a couple of these right steps up front, you can jump everyone so quickly.
And what do you do then from the perspective of, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, of not just blasting through the entire marketplace? How do you follow up and what's the cadence where you're not pissing people off eventually, where they see Alex Berman and I'm never going to reply to that dude no matter what happens, because they're just seeing that kind of constant bombardment of their inbox, which again is what a lot of people who are using cold email and automation inadvertently do, and they don't realize it.
Yeah. They don't realize that, and they don't realize that when they do start writing the first lines, every single one of those first lines, they're not seeing it the customer's not seeing it in the same context as you. They're not seeing like 1,000 lines in a doc. You write some cringy first line compliment, that's going directly to somebody's inbox. They're reading that. So a lot of people miss that.
So how do you follow up without being the annoying, cringy person after the fact?
So for cold traffic, we're following up a maximum of 4 times. And what we're typically doing is first email is going out exactly like we're talking about, customized. Second email is going to be just a bump like, hey, Will, I'm sure you're busy. Wanted to make sure this didn't get buried. Then the third email, maybe a week later, is what I call the big news, or the second case study, where it's like, hey, Will, just landed 2 major sponsorship Hey, Will, just landed 2 major sponsorship deals for, like Grant Cardone, like another channel that you've worked with. Again, would love to help you close some more sponsorship deals. Let me know if you're around. And then the fourth email is a breakup email. So, hey, Will, I'm sure, hey, Will, I'm just going to assume that closing more sponsorship deals isn't a priority this year. Let me know if that changes. Thanks. So the mindset here is you're not going to be annoying. Dude, I'm literally working with all your competitors and closing tens of thousands of dollars of deals for them. Get on board or not. Like, what the fuck? That's kind of how I am as a sales guy.
So, right. What do you say, Alex, to people who have a 50 email campaign that's some of it's automated, some of it is personalized, then they're going off doing social selling, and then they're commenting on people's things, and then they're following people on Twitter, and they're doing all this stuff, and maybe there's a few voicemails left in there as well. What do you say to those individuals when, because I'm in agreement with you here of, if I email someone 4 times and I don't get a meeting booked, I'm probably speaking to the wrong person or at the wrong time, and I feel 27 emails after the fact is not going to make any difference. I'm better sending another 4 emails in 6 months or 12 months from now. So what do you say to...
Yeah, another 4 emails in 12 months, or just another 4 emails in a couple weeks to, like, you're emailing the CEO, these 4, email the director of marketing, just move on down the ladder.
So do you have issues when you're working with brands and when you're teaching people? Do you have to convince them not to spam individuals? Because I find that's a conversation that I'm having more and more.
I see it in our group too. Like, people will join Email 10K. They'll pay the premium to learn our shit, and then they'll go out there and spam, and they'll be like, Alex, the emails didn't work. And I'll be like, what did you do here? Send me the script. And yeah, they'll not be using the custom first lines. They'll have the case study wrong, and I'll be like, oh no, don't send this to more than another, don't send this to 40 more people. Stop. And they'll be like, oh dude, I already sent it out to 3,000. What am I supposed to do here? So I very much believe in artisanal small batch emails, dude, just like the coffee. You're sending to 40 people, you're not sending to 4,000. And the reason why is if you're sending to 40 people and you can get, one of those to convert to a meeting, off of those 40, then you get that email script so solid. Maybe send to another 40, get it working, another 40, you get it working. Your email should perform so well that after 100, your calendar is booked. You shouldn't want to send 200 emails because there's too many meetings on your calendar. And that's what we found again and again when people are following our process. That's why we have this tested process. And that's why I'm like always talking about it, because it is a game changer. Now, what do I say to those people that are sending 50 emails? I would say, if you have to talk to somebody 50 times to convince them to work with you, something's wrong either with your offer or with your messaging or with the type of person you're talking to. You shouldn't be begging people to work with you. You should be sitting here as like the established great agency. And if you don't have case studies, you don't look established. We actually in the course tell you how to get other agencies to loan you their case studies. You can look established overnight. You need to be sitting here as like the pillar, dude. You are the guy and you act like the guy, and the guy wouldn't send 50 emails begging. The guy's so busy, he's going to maybe send 3 emails, 4 emails, and then he's going to move on.
How much of this is a weird question about a conversation about cold emails, and it's 2 different topics, right? But I think they might be intertwined here, and you've just led us up to it. How much of this is just mindset and confidence in the ability to be the man, the woman, whatever you want to call it, and just be the badass?
Right, it's gendered term. Be the person, or guy can be gender neutral.
We won't go down that rabbit hole. We'll be here all day with different pronouns and all that nonsense.
How much of it is mindset? I think it's all mindset. I think everything is all mindset. But yeah, man, if you're confident that you are the go-to spot and you're confident that you could change your bit, like right now, right? If I'm confident that I could generate $100,000 this month in sponsors for your channel, I'm going to tell you that. I'm going to tell you what we did in the past. And then if you don't work with us, I'm going to go to, someone else, dude. I'll pitch Patrick Bet David. I don't care.
Because it's interesting to me in that over at salesman.org, right, we've got this assessment. There's 12 elements to it, broken into 4 different groups. A lot of it is just confidence. A lot of it is just having it's not even a bravado or anything like that. It's just you being confident that you can offer value to someone. And when you feel good about what you're doing, you don't need to learn how to influence. You don't need to learn how to, the old school selling of manipulating people. You don't need any of that because it just comes across as just pure confidence. And that sucks people in. Now, clearly, it's difficult to do that over an email versus a in-person meeting or a video call or something like that. There's a barrier. There's multiple layers of communication where things can get lost. But what percentage of sales success do you think comes down to just being confident that you're actually going to be able to help someone?
I mean, if you're not confident that your product, I know Grant Cardone says this too, and I used to think this was so stupid, but I was justifying because our product wasn't good enough. When your product or service is that good, you want to sell it, and you don't really have time for anyone who has too many questions. You just kind of go for it.
It makes total sense. Okay, so I feel like
one more thing on that. So when you're talking, like a lot of people will go through and write like this amazing cold email script and like try to put all their personality in it. What our main approach is, and I think the reason why we're able to get that confidence across, is we follow more of the McDonald's method versus like Gordon Ramsay. So Gordon Ramsay will go out there, train for 30 years, create like the ultimate beef Wellington, right? And then you like come there. But McDonald's is just sprinkling a little salt, a little sugar in, a little fat in their meals, and you just keep coming back. So the salt, sugar, and fat of a good cold email campaign is butter them up with a compliment that's custom. We've done work like this in the past. We're super qualified. Do you want to work together? That's basically it. If you're into that McDonald's approach, you're going to buy. And if not, if you need to be buttered up a little bit, then go somewhere else. We'll be here when your hire fails. That you would, you think this hire is going to be good for you because they're buttering you up more. What I've found is the person who has to put all the effort into sales is usually the worst at delivery. But the person that is just there like, hey, I can do this, come to me or not, is usually the one that's killing it and doesn't have the time to be this influencer.
Yeah, that's my experience. And that's why the audience is going to see more content from us and less of my face within it, because you're right. And I guess we're going down the internet marketer route here. So we'll drag it back to B2B sales here.
It all day. Yeah.
Dude, well, we could do there's a spin-off show here of us just rinsing people, I'm sure. But with that said, mate, What happens then when I feel like I want to scratch the surface of the whole of your process as opposed to just focus on where we are now. So we'll wrap up the show with this. What happens when someone books a meeting? Is that a scheduled 15-minute phone call, an hour phone call? Are you just trying to qualify them? Are you delivering some training on the call? How do you set up that transition from a email to a conversation to then getting the deal done?
Sure. So the first 5 minutes is different depending on if it's an inbound or an outbound. If it's inbound and they know who we are, and they've already qualified, they've already given their budget and everything. So we can just jump right into the diagnosis process, which we'll talk about in 1 second. If it's a cold email, usually the first call starts with a little bit of introductions and then like a quick 30 to 45-second pitch. So they ask who we are, and our sales guys will say something like, hey, I'm Alex from X27 Marketing. We specialize in booking major billion-dollar brands for digital agencies. We help them get massive clients, and that's kind of what I want to talk about doing for you today. Just something really quick to qualify them, like a reminder of what you do. And then you enter into the diagnosis process, which, it's usually like 15 to 20 minutes. And the reason why I call it a diagnosis is you're a doctor getting a diagnosis. And imagine this, dude. Imagine you walked into a doctor's office, you think you have cancer, you've been studying on WebMD, you think you have cancer, and then the doctor immediately walks in and he's like, oh, so you have cancer. All right, here's the medicine. Right? Versus you go into the doctor's office and the doctor's like, oh, you think you have cancer? Like, what kind of pains are you having? Like maybe we should do like a test. Like which doctor do you trust more? The one that's just like trusting your own diagnosis and giving you a solution off the bat? Or do you trust the doctor that's actually trying to like ask and ascertain if you have this disease before giving you the drug?
Yeah, something that we do, just to double down on that analogy for a second, is because I use that analogy with our team, right? And I tell them, and I do this myself, we do lots of, you be speaking to a doctor, they'll be asking questions, and then they are somewhat non-responsive to the answers. Then the next question, somewhat non-responsive. And we find that then the buyer is excited to find the conclusion, as opposed to what most salespeople do is as soon as there's an opportunity to mention the product, to start pitching, they jump straight in there, they start throwing it down the buyer's throat. And then the buyers feels a little bit sick because they've just been like thrown up on of information. We tend to go the opposite direction. And again, this only really works if you have the person you speak to is somewhat pre-qualified, they're already interested, and maybe that's come from content marketing or wherever the leads come from. But yeah, just to double down on that.
But it can also come from that cold email.
Sure.
Because if they're like literally you're talking about improving their digital marketing, they're in a golden geese type of company. So they have the budget. Like you're making, $15 million in revenue. You can afford, $10,000, $20,000 a month in marketing. Sure. So they're qualified. It's just kind of sussing that out. And if they're not qualified, if their marketing budget is completely spent and their company's doing as bad as it's doing, bro, who can we fire so that we can start working together?
And how much of a focus is this on you, especially dealing with like client service businesses, right? Because my experience is a bad client service business as a customer is a terrible customer to have versus, a software organization. They tend to be better customers from my perspective. So do you do anything to qualify buyers from that perspective of the people you actually want to work with when you meet with them this is maybe a leadership perspective, but do you do anything to qualify buyers that you actually want to work with that are not going to be pain in the asses?
So I would much rather close the deal and then we have an exit clause. And I would rather close the deal, get the money up front, and then fire the client. Because sometimes you can tell, sometimes you can't. I'm a bigger fan of just let's get the money now, get them to pay us the 10 grand or whatever, and then if we hate them, then we can give the money back.
Yep, fair enough. That makes sense. We'll wrap up with this, Alex. Same question I ask everyone that comes on the show, mate. And that is, if you could go back in time and speak to your younger self, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give him to help him become better at selling?
It depends on which era we're talking.
Okay, let me rephrase it. The 3 weeks before COVID hits the US, UK, and Europe, what advice would you go back and give Alex of kind of 12, 18 months ago?
Okay. So pre-COVID, honestly, man, our business did better because of COVID. I would just say go bigger. I would say get ready to go big. I would reiterate the same advice that I told myself when COVID happened, which is when everyone pulls back, you gotta lean in. When COVID happened, we redid our webinar that was converting pretty well, we changed it from how to book meetings with $1 billion brands to how to book meetings during recession. And that just started crushing it. We redid our pricing. So we added a 5 pay over 5 months for this, tiny amount, like, $300 a month to join the thing. No, I mean, so when COVID happened, I was so worried. Also, because I saw our sales dip for that first, month or first couple of weeks when everyone was freaking out, like to the point where I couldn't even get out of bed. But then I started reading all the articles from like McKinsey and like the major consulting companies. And like I had to have the computer read them to me because I was so stressed. Like I couldn't even keep my eyes open. But like these major $1 billion companies didn't decide that the world was going to end because of COVID. So why would I, if McKinsey is still trying to sell $100 million consulting packages, why would I hesitate for a second to sell a $10,000 consulting package?
So I wasn't kind of in bed on the back of this, but I had a 2 or 3 week period where our sales dropped as well. And it took me, I made an assumption, and it was a wrong assumption to make. It was an assumption that people don't want to invest in their sales careers and work with us, both from a consumer perspective and a B2B perspective, if there's less money in the market. We've had our best year ever, 2020, and I think it's the same from you from what you're saying here, Alex. So making these assumptions is dangerous, right? Making these assumptions about whatever it is, you should be making assumptions and pushing to be optimistic as opposed to be pessimistic in 99% of situations.
Well, because dude, let's say you were right. Nobody wants your thing anymore. Would you rather die as a company, trying or not trying? If it really was the end of the world and the dollar fell apart and the US, UK went under and it was anarchy and people were running around shooting each other in the street, how would that change? Like, how would that change if you're in bed versus you're doing a webinar?
Yeah, I love it. And you're in the same situation as what I am, in that I've been banging on for years that in-person sales training is just nonsense. Most of it can be done online. If not all of it can be done online, it's so much more effective, cost-effective, effective of man hours, all this stuff. So I did nothing for 3 weeks, was stressed out. So the revenue dropped just slightly. The team was all still getting paid. Cash flow was still fine within the organization. And again, I made this terrible assumption when I was in exactly the right place at the right time, just by some foresight, but a little bit of fluke, I guess, as well. It's just insane how your mindset comes. We're talking about cold email, which is a very objective thing to do. You write these emails, you send them, you A/B test them, but behind it all is all this. It's your mindset and your belief system and everything else that goes along with sales, right?
Well, what's so crazy is we know what to do. Like you saw the stock market, dude. Stock market dipped. Everyone was like, oh crap, the economy's dead. And then guess what? It shot right back up because everyone knew, or at least the people that made money knew, that when the stock market dips, it's actually a buying opportunity. Mm-hmm. It's the same for business. Walt Disney said I think this was Walt Disney. He was like, when everybody else is scared, you go all in. Because who cares? Is kind of I added the who cares. But when everyone else is scared, go all in.
Yeah.
And we all knew that. That's the wisdom. But then when you're thinking the world's going to end, a lot of people would rather stock up on toilet paper than actually help their business grow. At the one time that it matters, dude, generational wealth was built in the last 7 months. And people were just like so depressed and scared because they're watching the news that they missed it. Y'all missed it. That's it. When's the next shakeup going to happen? When was the last coronavirus? Maybe 9/11? Maybe 2001?
Well, or 2008 with the financial crisis,
or
right?
2008, yeah. So it's going to be maybe another 10 years. Sorry, you missed it.
Well, with that, Alex, tell us where we can find Email 10K and tell us what you're up to Experiment 27 as well.
Sure. So the main thing, if you want to get all the free content, that's alexberman.com. That goes right to our YouTube channel. You can check out our free sales training. Email 10K is email10k.com. And then our marketing agency is experiment27.com.
Amazing stuff. Well, I'll link to all that in the show notes for this episode over at salesman.org. And with that, Alex, I appreciate you. Do you know what? I actually had a really good time chatting with you. Some of the guests the past few weeks have been a bit dry, mate. So I appreciate the energy and just the real talk, mate. That comes across. I think the audience appreciate that as well. And so I want to thank you again for joining us on the Salesman Podcast.
Thanks, Paul.